Until opening bell, another edition of the show this morning, and Temple Ashaju, thank you for coming through. Onyekai Joma joins us now from Vetiver Capital Management, and of course, Bosin Omofaye, executive editor here at Frontier Africa Reports. So now the markets, Nigeria, positive yesterday after a week of some very sentiments, which of course, the market opened with. So yesterday was positive by 29 basis points. BRVM Stock Exchange went lower, 1.37% to open the week negatively. The Egyptian Stock Exchange was positive by 40 basis points, opening the week stronger. Kenya, where we have the Nairobi Stock Exchange, was also positive, 0.21%. And South Africa, where Johannesburg Stock Exchange has been doing some entry and exit for a lot of investors, that was down by 21 basis points. A negative start to the week. We look at the East African headlines, where the Nairobi Stock Exchange is now set to launch its much talked about unquoted securities platform this coming Wednesday, that's tomorrow. Kenya Airways signs an interline deal with South Africa's regional airline, and that's Airlink. Branch to acquire some 84.89% stake in Century Microfinance Bank. Princeton further postpones merge exchange listing till June the 11th. And in Rwanda, we understand that agriculture accounts for 29% of GDP. That's coming from a report. Bosun, you've got these headlines to chew this morning with your cup of coffee.
Yes, thank you so much for making that reference. It's a proudly African cup early morning dose, by the way. So I hope you guys are not celebrating. But of course, I think the Kenya story, the biggest story for Kenya is the finance bill, which I've tracked over the last 2 days. And it looks like it's getting very highly contentious in terms of some of the provisions that are there. We're trying to talk to some of the analysts on the ground in Kenya what this finance bill means, because it looks like Kenyans are going to pay a whole lot more for petrol. They're going to pay for government through the treasuries, the central bank. There's a whole place, the whole social media network is filled with Kenyans, analysts at home and in diaspora, all of them talking about the new finance bill. And I think it's meeting a whole lot of noise there and all of that. I think they have a whole lot to deal with. Then we're going to hear more from them in the next, I think, in the next 24 hours or so. Rwanda's agriculture, 29% of GDP. That is good news. Rwanda has not, at least to my knowledge, discovered crude or hydrocarbon of any kind that is being exploited. So 29% of GDP, that is good news. They have tourism. I know tourism accounts for a chunk of their, a good size of their GDP as well. They have been able to hold their ground. Nigeria should be doing more than 29, 30, 40% of our GDP by agriculture, considering the arable land that we have in the country, north, east, west, central, everywhere. Agriculture could do 60, 70%. And I think we did that much at independence or thereabout before we discovered crude oil and everything went haywire in the manner of speaking. Kenya Airways is trying to stay alive, right? And any deal you see now that looks good on the table, take it off the floor. That's how the saying goes on Wall Street. Take the dollar off the floor. Don't wait until you see someone holding a bag of $1 million in one corner. For every dollar you see at every bus stop, pick it up. And you could just make $1 million at the end of the day if you go to every bus stop picking $1. So Kenya Airways, fighting for its life, will look for any deal that will help it reduce its debt burden, help it to stay alive, help it to keep some staff, help it to remain a going concern in the manner of speaking. Remember, the shares were suspended on the Nairobi Securities Exchange for quite some time because no one is sure what to do with it. The authorities in Nairobi, the Kenyatta's administration, are finding it very difficult to handle. Similar situation is taking place with Mango Airways in South Africa and South African Airways as well. Ethiopia Airlines Airways seems to be the only one that is head fully above the water. Etihad Airways and all the airways around the Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt Air, I don't find it very funny at all. So to that extent, I think it's a good one, whatever deal they can make. In fact, in terms of the unquoted securities market, I think Onyema is in the market to be able to speak to that, what this unquoted securities market is all about, if it is similar to what we have in Nigeria.
Onyeka, you want to take it on? The baton has been passed to you.
Yes, Watson. From all indications and from everything that we've seen about it, it seems like it's going to be very similar to the NASD markets in Nigeria, where you have, unlisted stocks, or more like unquoted stocks, able to get traded, able to get, transacted on in an organized manner, even though it's still over the counter trading. And while it has a lot of benefits across the spectrum, I would say the most important benefit here would be to the budding venture capital and tech space in Kenya. Kenya's digital economy has been one that has, grown faster than most of the rest of Africa, at least sub-Saharan Africa, for a while now. And one key issue with venture capitalists pumping money into any economy is exit opportunities. Typically, we tend to see a really long maturity timeline or really long path to profitability timeline for tech firms. And we know that the decentralized exchanges tend to have a problem with valuing these tech stocks, when they are listed, and so it's not a very attractive thing to just list them on the exchange, especially when they have not approached profitability at the time. The Securities Exchange would provide an opportunity for them to trade with other willing investors who are knowledgeable about the sector and will be able to come in and offer value, not just and see the value not just in the stock but also in the company, and will be able to come in as strategic investors also. I see that as the key benefits, of the unlisted securities exchange in Kenya.
Many thanks for that, Onyeka. Thanks a great deal for the contributions. That takes us to the West African and Nigerian markets headlines, where on FMDQ, our platform, MTN Nigeria lists new 19.77 billion naira Series 3 and 53.74 billion naira Series 4 commercial papers. Still with the FMDQ updates now, FSDH has got its funding special purpose vehicle SPV 7.05 billion naira series 1, 4.9 billion naira series 1 fixed rate bond also approved for listing on that platform. Kaztech, Salvic Petroleum to buy 4 OMLs in Nigeria for $340 million. NSIA Bank declares net income of 7.20 billion CFA franc in 2020, and that's as it relates to the Ivory Coast markets. I'll start with you, Onyeka, on these headlines, especially the Nigerian CPs, which we've got on the FMDQ platform.
Thank you very much, Temple. Yeah, we know that the past 2 years has been a booming market for commercial papers in Nigeria. We saw lower interest rates spark a renewed interest in the security across the corporate space in Nigeria. We've seen lots of commercial paper issues, and we've seen lots of commercial paper listings. I think that this recent listing is just going to go even further into deepening the commercial paper market in Nigeria. However, I think the most interesting story in the West African markets was the Kaztech Petroleum, the Kaztech and Slavic Petroleum story. It's a very messy story, which involves, Adax Petroleum, which is a Chinese-owned petroleum corporation, the Department of Petroleum Resources, the Ministry of Petroleum in Nigeria, and Kaztech and Slavic. And while I don't want to go into so much detail, I think that the only winner in this particular move by the DPR to basically award these OMLs to Kaztech and Slavic Petroleum, if they are able to come up with financing, would be Nigeria. Given the messy issue between ADAX and the Nigerian government, we saw 4 really large OMLs basically go into disuse, as ADAX was forced to release a force majeure on these licenses. and all. And it's right now where we're struggling for revenue and funding from every quarter. I think it's going to be very important for us to resume production on these OMLs. But the story in itself and the nature, I feel like was not handled very properly. So maybe Bosin has something to say on this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Onyeka. Bosin, over to you. What are your thoughts on these headlines, the commercial papers, and of course the OML to be purchased by Castec and Salvic?
I think we still have a very, very, I'm trying to choose my words very carefully, very unclear and not really transparent manner in which we award oil contracts, oil licenses, and whatever in Nigeria. Nothing significantly had changed from the military era. So let's get all this straight. We ran into democracy in 1999, and 20 years down the line, democracy is going to be 21 years or 22 years old in another 1 week by the end of next week or so, May 29th. So technically speaking, we are still on that road to democracy in the manner of speaking. We're not yet there, by the way. We have democratic process in place, we have democratic institutions, as it were, but we still don't have democratic practices. So we have institutions. We have the executive, we have the judiciary, we have the legislature at federal, at state level. Those are the brick and mortars. But in terms of practice, we don't have democratic practices yet in Nigeria, the rule of law, the transparency, the good governance that democracy ought to bring into play. That hasn't happened. Look, you will not award contracts for oil in Nigeria without the National Assembly having it an open debate or whatever it is openly discussed. I haven't seen the upper and the lower house committee on petroleum resources, whatever, should be part of that process of awarding contracts moving forward. Under democracy, it doesn't happen. So it's still the whole between Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the Office of the President, and the NNPC. And that's why it all ends. So the whole legislative process, the parliament, that ought to, because this is an asset of the people, for the people, and by the people of Nigeria, by the way. NNPC, or Ministry of Petroleum Resources, does not belong to the presidency. It belongs to Nigeria under democratic dispensation. But that's not what we see in practice. So we need to let the various, you won't award a pipeline project or whatever. Look at how it happens in the United States. Look, the whole Keystone XL projects, the administration went against it from Canada, and they said they're going to go against it. The House committee, the Senate committee debated it, you have it on the floor. It's a public issue. Everybody will make contributions. So the private companies involved will have to justify why they want to do such a project in the United States and what have you, in the interest of the public and interest of the economy. But we just read these things in the newspapers whenever there's a problem between the parties involved or whatever. When it's all going well, we don't get to know about it in the manner of speaking. So, but when there are problems like this, you begin to hear some news in the news. So we have democracy, but we don't have democratic practices well established yet in Nigeria, and that is all I'm going to say about that. As far as the FMDQ is concerned, look, down the line, I think the FMDQ has given a good account of itself within less than 10 years of existence, or thereabout. They've been able to pull left and right. This is the largest offering bought by MTN, the largest so far this year on our market despite the pandemic. So I say kudos to MTN, kudos to FSDH Merchant Bank and the group, as it were, because the financial services group, by the way. So and I think this is good moving forward for the market.
Thank you very much, Bosin. I appreciate those insights coming from you. The South African headlines now, where ex-MTN chairman, and that leaves us with MTN still, the ex-chairman, CEO Futuma Nhleko, joins the Johannesburg Stock Exchange boards with effect from July the 1st this year. Clicks Group to buy Pick and Pay retail pharmacy business. AngloGold Ashanti's first quarter earnings rises to more than $200 million. Mauritius, the stock exchange of Mauritius, listing of some 962.33 million shares of Lighthouse Capital Limited. In the Botswana Stock Exchange, one of the exchanges that we track here, especially with the corporate stories, you've got RDC Properties profits dropping by 22.5% to more than 82 million pula, actually. Bosin, let's hear your thoughts first. You've got Loads of corporate stories here. We're seeing a regulated now becoming a regulator, right?
I think I will leave, apologies, I think I will leave the MTN story to Onyeka. I'll talk a little bit more about the AngloGold and the story. Look, the mining story, and I don't want to leave the metals out of it, which South Africa is the home of metals on the African continent. Metal prices are running haywire right now. Platinum, aluminum, copper is the new cryptocurrency on the street right now. Everybody's running after it. The whole conversation is that, look, if you don't have anything in metals, then you need to get there because it is red hot. Copper prices, the face-off, the geopolitics between China and Australia on one hand, and the issues with Chile and whatever, copper per metric ton is about 10,000 US dollars. And then we're seeing some measure of stability in PMIs for the month of April. And not even including Africa, by the way, by some account, which I saw yesterday, the purchasing managers index, the numbers in terms of the economy, even though the jobs in the US were disappointing 2 days ago. But overall, from China, I think we're seeing a bit of growth trajectory in PMIs for the month of April to start the second quarter. Kenya softened a little bit, but I tell you, South Africa was in good number. Uganda is leading by about nearly 58 reading on the PMI. I think Nigeria is about number 4, about 52 point something. Ghana is about 52.1. Nigeria is about 52.7. Mozambique is about 51, thereabout. So I think we did about a ranking yesterday and we saw that. And we just say, look, Africa is not doing so badly when you talk about the manufacturing PMI for the month of April. So the metal prices are coming through into that. Gold was the king last year, you know, because folks did less on diamond. So Ashanti Gold reporting that numbers for first quarter, $203 million was the spike. But when they're done with the Obuasi mine, we're sure things will get a whole lot better. Mauritius Stock Exchange will admit any listings. That's just in the news. We put that in there for our viewers and readers. RDC, properties in Botswana. Look, property market is down nearly everywhere as we speak right now. Folks will need to deal with their daily food, their daily need, and what have you. So if you're into property market right now, from even the lower Manhattan in New York to everywhere, property markets is not really booming as it was. So everybody will just have to take things in their stride and move on, at least for now.
Thank you so much, Bosun. Onyeka, over to you for any additions.
Yes, thank you, Temple. I'll talk on the pick and pay story. I'll talk on the AngloGold Ashanti story and the GSE story. So on the pick and pay story, we see two, retail giants. We're basically seeing an M&A in the retail space, especially in the pharmaceutical retail space in South Africa. And given all that has happened in the past 1 year, I think it's really interesting that we are still seeing this sort of optimism, drive M&A activity in the space. We know that a while ago, Pick and Pay had already talked about looking to exit the pharmaceutical business, given that it wasn't part of their long-term growth strategy. And Clicks Pharmacy being the largest, pharmacy in South Africa, they were in the best position to take up these stores. The rationale for them is they want to increase their retail footprint in South Africa, as even though they've been trying to develop their online channels, people generally, our attitudes to pharmaceuticals in Africa, seem to tend towards over-the-counter, basically over-the-counter transactions. We still tend to walk into a pharmacy and speak directly to a pharmacist or to a chemist, talk about our problems and get these things. They don't expect it to change anytime soon, and I think it will be good business for them. On the AngloGold Ashanti story, Boasin said it all. Metal prices, especially gold prices, were largely the driver of these earnings. It's interesting to note that their output was actually down year on year. It was down by somewhere around somewhere around 8% year on year, if I remember correctly. But yet we saw a jump in revenue because of higher gold pricing. And like you said, once the Obuasi mine is fully developed, we should see an explosion in output and hopefully higher revenues and earnings from that also. On the GSC story, it's always a thing of, there's always merits and demerits to people from the industry coming into the regulator spaces. On one hand, given that they've been on the other side, they're always able to enact better policies to serve and to help regulate the space even better, given that they've experienced what it means to be on the other side. However, there are certain biases that tend to follow players into the regulator spaces, and also certain loyalties that tend to follow them at the same time. And we just hope that the move would work out well for MTN. It's one of the largest players on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It does make sense that one of the chairman of one of the most active players will be moving into the regulator space.
Thank you so much, Nhleko. Let's finalize the show with Northern African headlines, where S&P affirms Egypt's sovereign credit rating with stable outlook. British ride-sharing app Uber plans to enter Egypt in June this year. That's next month. Orascom reports consolidated profit after tax of more than 408 million Egyptian pounds for the first quarter of this year. In Morocco, Akdital expanding with 1.5 billion dirhams investments, plans an IPO as well. Still with Morocco, you've got Attijari seeing a further fall in primary bond rates in the second quarter of this year. Bosin, before we hear from you, Nhleko.
I think my final take will be on the show this morning will be on the Egyptian credit weighted and stable outlook. You look at Nigeria right now, outlook is negative. South Africa's outlook among the nearly all the rating agencies was negative as well. South Africa was going to the junk territory last year. I'm sure we'll remember that. A number of big names on the continent in terms of economy are not teetering between stable and negative and what have you. So it's a very unpleasant time, or not so good a time, as it were, for this economy. So for Egypt to get S&P stable outlook, that means it's a whole lot of hard work that Egypt has been able to put in place to get a stable rating outlook from S&P. Orascom being one of the largest companies within the Egyptian market and on the EGX as well, into construction, they're into a whole lot of businesses across the value chain, across the economy. So it's a behemoth of a company. And the earnings are coming through, again, despite the pandemic, despite the impact of what has happened, still able to report about nearly 410 million in local currency as a consolidated profit is good enough. Let's see how things move forward in the new year. Thank you
very much. Thank you so much, Boss. And Nhleko, your final thoughts before we close the show. Got a few seconds to the end of the program, though.
Yes, just to reiterate what Boston said on the credit rating, I think it's all down to the progress that Egypt has been able to make over the years. We saw that most countries in Africa had rating downgrades during the pandemic. However, given significant progress, Egypt, for the first time since the start of the pandemic, Egypt's outlook has now been rated as stable. I think the key reasons, the key rationales there were strong foreign exchange reserves, foreign exchange reserve appreciation, really strong growth, economic growth outlook, which are things that we've talked about, over and over on this show here. So it's not surprising. And then, the news of UVA entering into the market is also quite positive, given that Uber seems to have a chokehold on the market at the moment. And we know that from the Nigerian market and from some other sub-Saharan African market, that Uber can actually be challenged in this in the African space, and welcome to competition. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Onyeka Ijoma and Bosun Omofaye, for gracing us this morning with your presence on the show. Very much appreciated. Onyeka Ijoma is of Vetiver Capital Management. Thanks a great deal. Bosun Omofaye, Executive Editor here at Frontier Africa Reports. Thank you so much for your analysis on the show as well. This has been the show for today. I'm Temple Ashaju. Do have yourself a wonderful holiday. Ramadan season has just ended, and so go eat some meats and, of course, have fun. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.